he becomes disenchanted, then that is followed by dispassion, and he becomes liberated. 35.63 Asavati. Then the Venerable Nikaya approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, it is said, lone dweller, lone dweller. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one a lone dweller? And in what way is one dwelling with a partner? The Buddha said, Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises. When there is delight, there is infatuation. When there is infatuation, there is bondage. Bound by the fetter of delight, Nikaya, a monk is called one dwelling with a partner. There are, Nikaya, sounds cognizable by the ear. So similarly, they are desirable, lovely, enticing, etc. Odors cognizable by the nose, taste cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body, thoughts cognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them and remains holding to them, delight arises. When there is delight, there is infatuation. When there is infatuation, there is bondage. Bound by the fetter of delight, a monk is called one dwelling with a partner. Nikaya, even though a monk who dwells thus resorts to forests and groves, to remote lodgings where there are few sounds and little noise, desolate, hidden from people, appropriate for seclusion, he is still called one dwelling with a partner. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has not abandoned it. Therefore, he is called one dwelling with a partner. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, if a monk is infatuated still with the sense objects, then he is bound by them wherever he goes. Because he craves for them, he will always be thinking of them. So he's always thinking of them, the mind doesn't stop chattering. It's always as though somebody talking to him inside. That's why he's called dwelling with a partner. The Buddha continued, Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk does not seek delight in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, delight ceases. When there is no delight, there is no infatuation. When there is no infatuation, there is no bondage. Released from the fetter of delight, Nikaya, a monk is called a lone dweller. Similarly, for sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, thoughts, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, etc. If a monk seeks delight in them, then he is bound to them. So, if a monk does not seek delight in them, he is not bound by them. So he is called a lone dweller. Nikaya, even though a monk who dwells thus lives in the vicinity of a village, associating with monks and nuns, with male and female lay followers, with kings and royal ministers, with sectarian teachers and their disciples, he is still called a lone dweller. For what reason? Because craving is his partner and he has abandoned it. Therefore, he is called a lone dweller. That's the end of the sutta. So sometimes a lot of people, a lot of monks, they don't understand the suttas. Sometimes they think the outward renunciation is important, or making a show of it. But that is not so important as the inner practice. Inner practice, you don't have to go and cultivate all the ascetic practices to show that you are such a good monk. We have to only to answer to ourselves. If our mind is clean. That is a good monk, and not one who appears to be a good monk. Just like here, see that sometimes a monk appears to be dwelling alone, but he's not actually dwelling alone. He goes everywhere with craving. Now the next sutta, 35.64. Then the Venerable Nikaya approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, it would be good if the Blessed One would teach me Dhamma in brief, so that having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute. Stop here for a moment. You see, quite often the Buddha, because the Buddha encouraged his monks, after 5 years of monkhood, the first 5 years of monkhood, a monk is supposed to dwell with a teacher that can teach him the suttas and the Vinaya and traditions. But the most important is the suttas and the Vinaya. After 5 years, having known the sutta and the Vinaya, he's encouraged to go off and practice alone, stay in the wild, stay in the cave and all that alone, because that's the ideal condition for practicing. That's why here Venerable Nikaya says he wants to dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute. And the Buddha said, Nikaya, there are forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk seeks delight in them, welcomes them and remains holding to them, delight arises. With the arising of delight, I say, Nikaya, there is the arising of suffering. There are, Nikaya, sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, and thoughts that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, etc. If a monk seeks delight in them, delight in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, delight arises. With the arising of delight, Nikaya, there is the arising of suffering. So I stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, the six sense objects that impinge, make contact with our six sense doors, if we take delight in them, and that is a cause for the arising of suffering, because everything in the world is impermanent. When you are happy with something, you attach to it, later it will change. It's the nature of the world. So when it changes, there's a cause for suffering. There are, Nikaya, forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. If a monk does not seek delight in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, delight ceases. With the cessation of delight, I say, comes the cessation of suffering. Similarly, Nikaya, there are sounds cognizable by the ear, odors, taste, touch, thoughts, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, etc. If a monk does not seek delight in them, delight ceases. With the cessation of delight, I say, comes the cessation of suffering. Then the Venerable Nikaya, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Then dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute, the Venerable Nikaya, by realizing it for himself with direct knowledge in this very life, entered and dwelt in that unsurpassed goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness. He directly knew, destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more for this state of being. And the Venerable Nikaya became one of the Arahants. So you see this teaching, the Buddha is basically telling him that all the things in the world that are lovely, enticing, pleasing, they give you suffering. So don't cling to them, let go. So if a person practices the holy path, he gives up worldly happiness, and he goes within himself. When we go within ourselves, then we slowly begin to experience a different kind of happiness. is totally different from worldly happiness. Worldly happiness gives you happiness for a very short time, does not last. But the happiness within is very hard to get, but when you can get it, it's long lasting. It lasts. That's why, like for example, the Buddha said that those monks who attain the second jhana, when they are reborn in the heaven, the second jhana heaven, their mind itself gives them so much happiness that every day they say sukha, 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 just like on ecstasy pill. And that is for millions of years, millions and millions of years, not just for a short But because it's difficult to get that type of happiness, and most people don't know about that type of happiness, that's why most people are not willing to renounce worldly happiness. Worldly happiness, they think they can see here and now. Why want to chase after something that you cannot see? So that's the way foolish people think. They think they don't have the foresight, they don't think so long, they don't think so far. The next sutta, 35.68. This sutta is about Venerable Samyutta. He asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, it is said, the world, in what way, Venerable Sir, might there be the world, or the description of the world? And the Buddha said, where there is the I, Samyutta, where there are forms, I consciousness, things to be cognized by I consciousness, there the world exists, or the description of the world. Similarly, where there is the ear, sounds, ear consciousness, there the world exists. And similarly, where there is the nose, there are smells, etc., and the body, touch, etc., and mind and thoughts, etc. Whereas there is no I, Samyutta, no forms, no I consciousness, no things to be cognized by I consciousness, there the world does not exist, or any description of the world. Similarly, where there is no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, there the world does not exist, nor any description of the world. So here the Buddha is saying that the world is within our six senses. When you have the six senses, then you have the six sense consciousness, and you have everything in the world is inside the six senses and six sense consciousness. The next sutta, 35.69. On one occasion, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Upasena were dwelling at Rajagaha in the cool grove in the snake's hood grotto. Now on that occasion, a viper had fallen on the Venerable Upasena's body. Then the Venerable Upasena addressed the monks thus, come friends, lift this body of mine onto the bed and carry it outside before it is scattered right here like a handful of chaff. Stop here for a moment. This Venerable Upasena, it seems, this very poisonous snake had fallen on his body. I don't know whether it bit him or not. But suddenly he realized he was going to die. So he asked the other monks to carry his body outside. He says before he's scattered here. Because he has attained, he must have become an arahant, and his psychic power is so great. When he dies, his body can just disappear. Probably one way of explaining it could be that he has been meditating on the fire element, so that when he dies, he can just use the fire to burn the body completely until there's no trace of it. When this was said, the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Upasena, we do not see any alteration in the Venerable Upasena's body, nor any change in his faculties. Yet the Venerable Upasena says, come friends, lift this body of mine onto the bed and carry it outside before it is scattered right here like a handful of chaff. Stop here for a moment. So Venerable Sariputta says, Says, your body seems perfectly all